Hello and welcome everyone to a post-summer edition of MHQ's Foundation 101 podcast, where I'm very happy today, finally I managed to catch him, to have Shadi Al Nasser. Good morning, Shadi.
Good morning, Jan, and thank you for having me in your podcast.
Pleasure. So Shadi is a principal senior client strategist with BNY Mellon, and why I wanted to have him on this little webcast is that his institution has published what I think is the absolute smash hit research paper out there. It's called Shifting Horizon: Insights into How Family Office Are Responding to Rapid Economic and Social Change. And what it is a snapshot done by the bank on the large part of the single family office and multifamily offices, its services. And since BNY Mellon is the largest custodian in the world, they have a couple of insights or two on how single family office function, operate, think, and look forward to develop. So this is why I wanted to have Shadi here. If you want to read this paper, and I wholeheartedly encourage you to do so, you can download it and scan it directly, or otherwise go on BNY Mellon's page. You can probably find it there. But without further ado, Shadi, let's jump into a couple of these hot topics that we are going to discuss. So if I start with you, in the views of the bank, what are the structural changes that you are seeing in the family office domain of late?
Well, again, Jan, thank you for the introduction. Well, at BNY Mellon and in the landscape of family office in general, there have been structural changes in the family office domain. Like we all know that over the past few years, the world has experienced a public health crisis, social tensions, technological disruptions, and economic turbulence unseen in decades. All these put together have exacerbated the need for transition of wealth, next-gen planning, adoption of digital assets, and leveraging technology to reduce the risk and increase the visibility of the underlying asset performance. Most importantly, what we have witnessed is the need and the desire to give back to society through those family offices. The massive amount of transition and transfer in flight has created sense of urgency for families to restructure the way they manage their wealth. Their operating models are evolving into a more corporate-like structure, embedding SOPs, the standardized policies and procedures within their governance framework. And interestingly enough, they're also seeking out non-family members to join the office, and often these individuals are highly experienced employees of global firms, bringing with them institutionalization and change in behavior. So this is the wide framework and the structural changes we perceived and see in the family office domain.
Interesting. So when you speak about family office evolving into more like a corporate structure, has there also been a shift in the way they invest, let's say more like an institution?
Of course, absolutely. Like you see, the clients are becoming more global in their investments. They're breaking away from the traditional asset classes and investment policies of the 60-40, and even shying away from the investment vehicles and diversifying their investment base while strengthening their financial and operational resilience.
Yep.
They're actively pursuing opportunities in M&A, private debt, private equity, alternatives, hedge funds, all those in new trends. But equally important, sustainable investments is also gaining traction. In the past, we witnessed families asking about the return of their capital, whether their capital is going to come back to them or not. Then they evolved to say, okay, the return of our capital and the return on capital. Now they're more interested in the return of capital, of course, return on capital, but also if they're going to deploy this capital, what is the impact their money and their investments and their capital will have in the society. We have also seen some of the investment strategies adopted by more mature families are akin to those of sovereign funds and institutional investments. This is how the behaviors is evolving and changing in the family office space.
Very interesting indeed. So what I think is a hot topic, and you touched on that, is you can see it on the US side where the bank comes from, but also at large in the Middle East, where families historically have been very philanthropic in their activities. Can you tell me more about how these families are shifting their investments towards social good? And perhaps what are the top driving forces to increasing the engagement in philanthropy?
Well, the main driver, and eventually because they are good families, okay, with a sense of responsibility and desire to give back. But also there is an important reason besides being good. Having philanthropic activities and initiatives within the family office unites the family members, the current leadership and the future leadership around a shared cause and value, which brings more homogeneous in thinking in the family office. Now, family offices are adapting or have some sort of philanthropic activities in their business plan and operating models. However, only 30%, only 30% of the family offices have documented strategy and a structure in the way they conduct their philanthropic activities. Now, the way they do it in all forms of shapes. Some are still following the traditional way by donating and giving directly to charities. This is good, but it doesn't have a lasting and sustainable impact. Now, moving up in the approach, some are creating trust and foundations dedicated for philanthropic activities in general. But from my view and what we have witnessed in the market, the ultimate way to have your philanthropic activities is by sitting with the family, deciding on the family overall values and objectives, adopting a cause and advocate for it. Not only donate money, but advocate for the cause and group up with other family offices and like-minded people to really try to solve the main issue and have a more lasting impact on your dollar paid and the effort spent.
Yeah, and we see it at single family office conferences, some of which we actually attend together, is philanthropy was almost nowhere 10, 15 years ago, and it's now very in demand, and you see families really getting involved, often with the next gen in that, which brings me neatly to my next question. You have mentioned earlier that family office have now, in your research, increased focus for the transition of wealth. Can you perhaps elaborate on that?
Well, there has been a growing trend of wealth transition from business to individuals. And this is what we are seeing globally. Everyone talks about transitioning of the family business from generation to another, but this is a big or a lot of money. However, the bigger pot is from the shift of the assets from the family-owned business to the family office. There has been a recognized effort to distinct the private wealth of individuals and family from the business assets. So initially, where the family investments were being managed by the same employees that they manage the operation of their businesses, being the CFO, the accountants, and the GM. Now, as we've mentioned earlier, they're seeking out professionals who have managed institutional money to bring them over their family offices. You know more than me, Jan, that separating that assets from business to family office reduces the risk, being like the operation risk, jurisdiction risk, because businesses come with their inherent and intrinsic risk that can be hedged and mitigated.
Yeah, so effectively it is going out from the embedded single family office or founder's office model to something a bit more sophisticated, often standalone, whether outsource or insource. We can discuss that later on. So to enable this this transition, what would be the right oversight model for families in your opinion, bearing in mind that they are likely to split historical business where they have strong oversight and experience and not necessarily in the other?
Now, going back to the same point, you see many experts in the market talk about like when family business moves from first generation to the second, all the way to the third and fourth, most probably it will not last and vanish. But no one comes across the transition of wealth within the family office, not the family business. And I think it has a higher risk element in it. Why? Because every event or triggering event of transferring leadership from current generation to the other, regardless of the hierarchy being first, second, and third, the risk of having the family office continuing is equal every time. That's why family offices should be prepared in advance, months or even years before, like shifting or transitioning the leadership, or before the triggering event, being a liquidity event, selling of business, and so on. At the start, it's very prudent for the family to start by overseeing the core services and outsourcing as much as possible in the initial phase. To that extent, the two basic tasks for the family should be first to consolidate their assets with a master custodian to hold and protect and safeguard their assets in one place, to enable independent, consolidated accounting, oversight, holistic view. So the family would take less time and effort to know what they have, what they own, what their liabilities are, where their exposure and so on. But equally important is to hire an investment advisor. A CIO will be responsible for the overall investment strategy, establishing asset allocation, conduct manager due diligence. This can be accomplished by having an in-house advisor, CIO, or outsourcing this service to a money manager who have done it institutionally. But also, equal importance is not hiring the best talent who are technically capable, but also a CIO who can understand the family values, aligned with their families. And nowadays, having a CIO or investment advisor that only knows or technically solid when it comes to investments is not sufficient. They should have a background about philanthropy, so they can embed some of the philanthropic strategy in the family office operations and wealth planning. They should be knowledgeable enough about succession and legacy planning, about the holding structures, at least if they don't have the knowledge to be able to conduct the due diligence and hire the right people like yourselves, like well-established advisors to tell them what to do and how to do the right structure.
All valid points, and perhaps one more on that is the cost effectiveness, because once you are a family and you look at your portfolio, your asset classes, etc., yes, you want to generate revenue, but you actually want to generate real revenue. And often the cost aspect is where a master custodian can provide a lot of optimization, as you guys have demonstrated with one of our clients just earlier this week. So very good. Now, next step. For you, you mentioned the consolidation, the CIO aspects. Let's talk about the legal structure, which is what we are all about in this webcast. What would, in your view and the bank's view, be the appropriate legal entity structure, and how can families optimize it or lean towards improvement?
Well, every family, Jan, is unique, and I've heard you in several seminars and conferences saying, like, once you visit a family office, you have visited a family office. Okay, you cannot overrule and all the activities and the nature of family offices. So it depends on their unique jurisdictional regulatory and tax consideration. When starting a family office, in the past, the natural tendency is to incorporate it where the family business is established or where the matriarch or patriarch live. Now, over time, however, family members relocate. They're becoming, as we discussed, global in their views, being in citizenship or investments. So it's necessary to move to an office or add satellite offices to other jurisdictions. Now, internationally, PICs or private investment companies are a common structure. So what we have witnessed or seen family are doing, depending on their assets and holdings, they establish PICs, private investment companies, in various jurisdictions. And then these PICs are being held by a trust. However, nowadays we were seeing that the foundations are becoming more in demand and replacing trust as the preferred owners of the PICs. And they can do both. They can have like the PICs where the assets are held, but also have a foundation where they live and their businesses, operating businesses, are incorporated. And we are lucky to be in UAE, where we have the option between ADGM or DIFC to have our foundations, and then they accept and understand various structures and enable migration of other foundations and can hold various PICs. Again, every family should sit with a lawyer and a consultant that can advise them based on their needs, what would be the right overall structure without complicating things and adding so unnecessary layers, but at the same time, justify the end purpose for the family.
And you said something very important, which is we actually like to structure where the family sits, if possible. And increasingly more families are sitting in the Gulf. So why not use the jurisdiction of the Gulf to structure some of that and then use pivot as and when appropriate in other jurisdiction, being the US, Channel Island, etc. So with that in mind, what in your view should the family keep in mind when selecting the location for setting up its operational epicenter, its family office?
Well, yeah, I'm sitting in front of the expert. Okay, so learning from you, but also learning from the families and family offices that I interact with. The most important thing is the selection of in the selection of the jurisdiction is to be in a place where they have political stability, adheres to the rule of law. It should have adequate privacy, regulations, and access to quality staff. This is very important, to have access to quality staff and professional advisors. And most importantly, should provide access to the desired legal structures. As we've mentioned, this jurisdiction should enable the migrations of other foundations or trusts from various jurisdictions, should understand and incubate other holding structures, be able to hold PICs in various jurisdictions. As I said, the structuring should be cost effective, easy to understand, and easy to implement. These are the key factors where a family should consider when selecting the jurisdiction. What would be your view, Jan, on the jurisdictions? What would be your view on the jurisdiction selection?
I think we are pushing back on a lot of bad habits. We tend to tell people, do not do what has been done. Think of what is going to be done in the next 10 years. Remain nimble. I think the cost effectiveness that you mentioned is very important, and go for quality. A lot of people still use some remote offshore jurisdiction they've never visited just out of habit because they have it for the past 20 years. That's not necessarily a solution in today's world. So the tendency that we see is really people structuring and administrating from the jurisdiction where they are, or where they have high value assets. And you can split that. If you custodize in the US, in the UK, etc., you can control it from here. You can control it through a pivot. That's really the trend, particularly with global families, because they will not necessarily have one epicenter. They are likely to have 2 or 3. Which brings me neatly to the management of the office, because sometimes it's not one office, it's several. So yes, from your experience dealing with families at the bank level, what would be the best practice in terms of family office management?
Well, very good question, Jan. And successful family office requires more than just a good plan. It requires effective management that is flexible enough to adapt to the changes that's happening every other day. It's so fast that the management should be very flexible and adaptive. Now, best practices for family office management would typically include a mission statement, but this mission statement should be in the family's own voice that captures the business goals as well as the family goals, along with the important family values that will guide the decision-making for current and future generations. Everyone can hire a good CIO and can establish family office and do investments. This is not the hard part. The hard part is to have a reason for the family office, a value statement that reflects their thinking and to ensure that it lasts over generation. A good family office should have governance process that clearly outlines the ownership versus management responsibilities, policies that are that define the role and the list of the responsibilities of each staff. We really encourage family offices not to have their own family members interfering and managing the day-to-day operation or the investments. A better structure would have the family members sitting at the board or as the investment committee to oversight, to guide, but not to involve themselves in the operation. Now, also, as we said, adopting technology, okay, is very important. However, it can be a significant cost and expense for the family. So at the beginning, with the plan, they should implement a technology roadmap that would be optimal solution. It should have detailed outline of the services offered by whom to whom, and with time, they would know what they require as a core service in the family office, what they can outsource and what they need to bring in-house. But this is all doable, but the most important part is the thought leadership, the ongoing education, promotion of enlightenment, as I said, giving back to society and engaging the next generation on their family businesses and family office operations.
So that's very topical because I know that you guys at BNY Mellon have this outstanding program for next gen educating, teaching, etc. So can you perhaps give me a couple of nuggets that come out of this program in terms of what do you keep hearing? What are the barriers for successful succession planning from the next gen front?
We at BNY Mellon realize that if we want to think short term, we will have to deal only with the patriarch, matriarch, or the principles of the family office. But however, if we want to have a lasting and a long relationship, we should get involved with the next gen by providing them with specific programs that are tailor-made to the families and their needs, and educating them about simple topics, being how to create, first of all, how to create wealth, how to sustain wealth, what is saving versus investments, how to demystify trust, what is this trust, why it's required, how can they get involved in the family office, what is a family office. We go all the way from basic training to more advanced topics. We have family members who are 13 and 14 years old, and we do see family members who are in their mid-40s, and they is like, okay, I was not prepared in the past, it's never too late. Now I want to get prepared to be part of the family office. And this is important, Jan, because as per the survey Shifting Horizon that we have done, 50%, only 50% of the family offices have a succession plan.
Yeah.
And the rest, they're just leaving it, okay, for the future. They keep, as they say, kicking the can till the end of the road. And when we ask them why do you do that? So either the family or the CIO of the family office, they shy away from discussing these topics. They believe it's very sensitive and it might impact the relationship with the family and create a dichotomy among the family members. So here where we step in by indirectly engaging the second gen, we tell them about the importance of succession planning. So they go to their current office leaders and patriarchs and like, okay, what's going to happen in the future? What is the succession plan? And if there are points that we need to resolve, it can be resolved now. I'll tell you an interesting finding also that we had in the survey, that less than 15% of the next gen are willing to continue in the same business that the family run. Yeah. Only 15%. 80% of the next gen or future leaders want and willing to explore other venues of investments like cryptocurrencies, digital assets, decentralized financing, peer-to-peer lending, and they are open to the idea, and they want their existing management to start this shift now. They want their CIO to have part of their allocation on those investments and venture capitals now. So they are more interested and more engaged with the family office. It's also interesting how the next generation thinks, and I like their thinking. They are more than 81%, Jan, are willing to forego some part of profits and returns just to invest in investments that are sustainable and gives back to society in ESG. And this is unheard of. So if those intellectually gifted people are not involved today, the shift of thinking for the existing family office will not be smooth in the future. And this is the role we play to bridge that gap.
So there you have it, folks, from the mouth of the specialist in custody worldwide, BNY Mellon. Thanks a lot, Shadi. That was eye-opening. And again, I encourage everyone that is listening to go and download this paper. It's full of amazingly useful data. If you care about structural optimization, next gen, family office optimization, it is the bomb. Shadi, thank you very much. And I hope to see you soon somewhere on the road. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.